Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan is off tonight. He will be back on the broadcast tomorrow. It started back in the Clinton era, back in 1995, when he joined the new 1995 New Transatlantic Agenda with the European Commission. At the November 9, 2007 meeting, a joint report stated progress in the following areas: removing barriers to trade and investment, easing regulatory burdens in various policy areas, including drugs and disease control, the importation into the EU of U.S. poultry treated with pathogen reduction treatments, federal communication commissions, and allowing suppliers to create declarations of conformity for products, uniform standards for electronic products, and agreements on standard for fewer biofuels. Orlene Kurla, SHR Media's global affairs correspondent, in her book By Stealth and Deception, said in her book that predicted that in 2015 that the House of Representatives, along with the President of the United States, would try to pass the Transatlantic Pacific Partnership. Well, sure enough, it looks like Congress may be fast-tracking this bill for the Transatlantic Pacific Partnership. Curtis Ellis is a political communications consultant and writer for WorldNet Daily. In previous lives, Mr. Ellis was a writer and producer for the CNN program Lou Dobbs Tonight. He's also been a producer for NBC News, CBS News, and a reporter for Associated Press Radio. He joins us now to discuss this further. Good evening, Curtis.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure having you with us tonight on this. And, foreign policy happens to be a favorite topic of mine to research. So in researching this book today, I've been reading our aforementioned analyst Orlene Kurla's By Stealth and Deception book, The Transformation and Its Parallel to the European Union. And surprisingly enough, I did some research today into this. And I am not shocked, but yet not surprised that we have the likes of many Republicans on this issue of this transatlantic Pacific Partnership. This is just not a Democrat issue. This is both a party issue that both want to happen. Tell us why this would harm America.
What this is a direct attack on our sovereignty and our independence as an independent nation. We're seeing a slow drift towards economic integration. They want the people behind these plans, they talk about free trade, but it is not free trade. This is a combination of big business working hand in glove with big government to basically provide special favors to the crony insiders, to the big business insiders on Wall Street, the guys who got the billion-dollar bailout, and to some of the favored large corporations like General Electric, people like that, big surveillance in Silicon Valley. Now, what has been the hallmark of American civilization has been a broad-based prosperity with a large middle class of small businesses, of people owning their own business or working for someone they know, in family-sized enterprises. When you get into these big corporatist-sized enterprises, you lose the personal connection. You've got a few people on top who do very well, and everybody else gets paid peon wages. But now it's moving beyond that onto a global scale, where you've got this government thinking not in terms of what's good for America, but what's good for the corporatist bottom line. And these corporations, the days, let's put it this way, the days of what's good for General Motors is good for America, those days are gone, long gone. These corporations are now basically stateless entities, which is how they describe ISIS and Al-Qaeda, a stateless entity. It's not, they're not married to any states, any nations, and these corporations are not married to any nations. They go shopping around the world looking for the best tax rate they can find, the best labor rates they can find, the best deal they can get for resource extraction. They're all flocking to China because the Chinese government gives them subsidies, builds them free factories. So then they start building the iPhones in China because they get a free factory, free land, low-interest loans from the government. Then they export those goods to America. They used to make Apple computers in America, but when the Chinese government started giving them special favors to go over there, they go over there. They don't care if it, if it messes with the California workforce. So what we have here is this government corporate combine that is working for the good of these corporations that have no loyalty to the United States. And who gets crushed in this combine? The American worker, the American people, the folks that used to be able to earn enough with one wage earner to support a family, so that maybe the wife would volunteer as a youth minister, and they'd have enough money to buy a car every few years, go on a vacation, have somebody home to raise the kids. Now you've got two wage earners out there barely making enough to scrape by. Nobody's watching the kids. The kids are sniffing glue or on drugs or something, and nobody has time to volunteer for the little league, or take their go to Sunday school even. It's a terrible situation, and it's part of this globalization. What we have here is go ahead. I'm sorry. I was saying what we have here is people don't pledge these corporatists, the people behind these deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They don't think in terms of the United States of America. I used to pledge allegiance to the American flag. They pledge allegiance to this thing called the global economy.
You're certainly right, and we are seeing the failure of as they say, the globalist agenda over in the EU right now. We just have to look at the country of Greece, a perfect example of it. They're in debt, and all the minority EU countries are now being forced by the head EU country, Germany, to have to bail out Greece because the Greek government, who is in charge, decided to misspend all of Greece's money. And so who gets to pay the price? Not the Greek people, not the Greek government per se, but the people within the European Union. We've also seen it according to Orlene Kurla in her book Stealth and Deception, the test of the African Union, more predominantly the East African Union, and how that has been tried and it has failed.
That's right. Look, everywhere people want they want some local control, they want local say-so, and the larger and larger these combinations get, whether it's the European Union or some transatlantic union now or the proposed North American Union, you're getting further and further away from local control and accountability. And it doesn't matter whether it's the private sector or the public sector. It's the same thing. The same dynamic goes on. If you've got a giant corporation that's headquartered in Geneva, run by stockholders from Tokyo, they don't give a darn about the people, about the employees in Flint, Michigan, right? But if you've got a locally owned business in Flint, Michigan, where the owner of the business, his kids go to the same school as the employees in that business, you're going to have a different dynamic. People start looking at people as people instead of as units, economic units and cogs and some type of balance sheet and bean counter spreadsheet. It's and you see it as you were saying, you see it in the public sector with these giant things like the European Union, the East African Economic Unity Forum, and now we have this Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would merge the U.S. economy with 11 countries in Latin America and Asia. And as John Kerry said, it is the next stage in NAFTA. They want to merge our
Well, you bring
economy.
up
And that's
NAFTA. I'm glad you bring up NAFTA, Curtis. You read my mind on this because most people thought NAFTA was defeated, that NAFTA was an old bill of former President George W. Bush, and thought that President George W. Bush tried to press it. People weren't excited about it. Matter of fact, they were so against it, he decided to drop it. And it's been a big fight, and was one of Phyllis Schlafly's biggest accomplishments, being the president of Eagle Forum, trying to defeat that. But NAFTA was actually passed. It's already been implemented. We're already part of NAFTA as far as Canada and Mexico goes, as part of NAFTA goes. I want to read you some statistics here, at least for the audience. I'm sure you know this, Curtis. In Mexico, their trade deficit went from $9 billion to $19 billion after 4 years of being part of the EU Free Trade Agreement. Also, the country of Chile lost over 70% of its mining exports. They are now being handled by foreign companies. So this shows failed EU policy, and I'm just mentioning two countries, one being Mexico, which is right next door to North America, and the other one being Chile, which is over in South America. We're already seeing it failed in our neighbors. Why in the world would our House of Representatives would even want to think of trying to do this? And I know Speaker John Boehner is on the list of those Republicans that actually support this bill.
Yeah, that's right, and so is Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in the Senate. They support this. They not only support these so-called trade agreements, like the Transatlantic Partnership and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They want to fast-track it. They want to give President Obama these vast new powers called Trade Promotion Authority, which would strip Congress of its ability to thoroughly vet and debate the bill, to read it, and to amend it. And it would require a simple majority vote in both houses of Congress to approve it, not the two-thirds majority, two-thirds supermajority in the Senate that treaties are supposed to require. So, yes, John Boehner and Mitch McConnell are enthusiastic supporters of this. And by the way, so is Paul Ryan, who's chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives. They want to move this thing through before people even know what hits them. And once it goes through...
Pardon me, Curtis, in your research for this story, how do you gauge the presidential candidates on this? Now, I could pretty much ascertain that former Florida Governor Jeb Bush is a supporter of this, considering that his brother, former President George W. Bush, was the one who wanted to pass this NAFTA treaty.
That's right. Jeb Bush is in favor of it. He's spoken out in favor, saying he's in favor of it. Rand Paul is a bit on two sides. He said he likes free trade. He's not quite sure about this fast track Trade Promotion Authority, but he likes free trade. And Ted Cruz is for it. He said he loves free trade so much that he's willing to give Obama more power to make it happen. Now, I talked to Ted about this.
This is breaking news to me, Curtis. So Ted Cruz, who is considered right now America's darling Tea Party conservative, and I've been critical of Ted Cruz before, ladies and gentlemen, so this isn't the first time. So if you're surprised by me in criticizing Ted Cruz, you're listening to the wrong radio program. But Ted Cruz, in support of this is going to be a shocker to certain Tea Party conservatives who are interested in Ted Cruz.
That's right. Now, I talked to Ted. I saw him down in South Carolina, and I said, Ted, look, you can be for free trade, but make no mistake, this Trans-Pacific Partnership ain't free trade. But more importantly, giving the president this fast-track power is a complete abrogation of congressional responsibility, congressional oversight. It's a dereliction of duty on the part of Congress, and it's a terrible. It does violence to the Constitution. So if you want to get out there and say you're for free trade, you think it's great to have more trade with other countries, great. But you can be for free trade and be against fast track. Now, all I know is he didn't listen to me, and it's a matter of public record. It's well known and been well documented that Ted Cruz's wife, who works as a partner at Goldman Sachs, She was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations on the very committee that endorsed the idea of a North American Union. So,
yes,
go.
We saw Orlene Kurla, our SHR Global Affairs correspondent. Her and I have always talked about the Council of Foreign Relations. If you're part of that Council of Foreign Relations, that's a receipt for bad news right there. So that's disturbing, ladies and gentlemen. See, it's good we're having this segment tonight, and it's just happening right before the presidential primaries, Curtis, because now people can look and vet these candidates. Because you know what? I'm not going to tell you how to vote, people. You, the American people, have to do the research on who you can vote for this presidential primary. And right now, and I'm speaking in my own honest journalistic opinion, if Ted Cruz is in support of this and he's in support of bringing down the U.S. economy and taking away your job, I wouldn't be voting for the guy. I'm just saying.
Really? Now, one thing that's included in this Trans-Pacific... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
I was going to say something now. This is a real shocker. What's in this Trans-Pacific Partnership? One of the things, I mean, it's been kept secret. It's been negotiated by Obama in secret over the past 6 years. What we've learned is from leaks. But here's something interesting. The administration's own trade representative, the USTR, U.S. Trade Representative, says on the website that one of the key features of the Trans-Pacific Partnership are temporary entry guest worker visas. So this would...
let's talk immigration. I'm ready for this one.
Exactly. It's immigration. Temporary entry guest worker visas so that corporations will be able to bring employees into this country at will. And Milton Friedman said there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. So when they start talking about temporary entry visas, you know how temporary that's going to be. It's as long as they want them here.
Yeah. Can you explain to us a little bit about this L1 visa program? Because looking at this information, this has to do with U.S.-South Korea deal on this. And then next after that, I want to bring up healthcare briefly.
Right. So the L1 visa, it's a classification, a category of visas for what's called intra-company transfers. So if I'm a corporation and I have a branch in South Korea and a branch in America, let's say Samsung. Samsung has headquarters and factories and offices in South Korea, and they have offices and facilities here in the U.S. If I work for Samsung, or I can move back and forth between those two facilities at will. I don't need a special visa. I need under an L1 visa program. The company can move me back and forth, and the U.S. government can't say, "I'm sorry, you can't go." So let's put it this way. In the old days, you would want companies investing in America and building factories in America, building facilities in America so they could hire Americans. But with the L1 visa, the company no longer has to hire Americans. They can just bring people in from other places. And it's maybe better for the corporate bottom line, but what does it do for this country? What does it do for the American people? It doesn't do anything for us. It just makes it easy for the corporations to move people around on the checkerboard of the world stage, but it doesn't do anything for that country. Now look, China, if an American company goes into China, the Chinese government says, okay, first thing you have to do is you have to hire Chinese citizens and provide jobs for our people. Second thing you have to do is you have to turn over the blueprints for all of your products and tell us how to make it. That's the cost of entry. That's the cost of admission if you want to get into the Chinese market. Meanwhile, our government is saying, hey, you want to open a branch in America? Fine. You want to bring your people in? Fine. That's great. We just love to have you here. You don't have to train Americans to do these jobs anymore. Just bring your own people in. So it's a fool's game, and we're being played for the suckers.
You bring up the economy, which was to be my next question to you, Curtis. If this is to pass, and this transatlantic partnership is passed, will this, in essence, merge all of our economies together? So, look, for example, and I don't pretend to be a business major. That's more my co-host's expertise than I am. But I'm just saying, if the Chinese yen right now, not exactly doing well. Chinese economy is actually slowing down, not picking up. So if the Chinese have a bad day on their stock market and their yen goes down and we're part of this deal, does that affect the U.S. economy as well?
Oh, you see, yeah, exactly. And that's the danger of going towards this integration, this economic integration that seems to be the holy grail for these globalists and these global corporatists. They want this smooth, integrated, harmonized, frictionless integration of economies all around the world. Well, what happens then is if China catches a cold, America gets pneumonia. You want some gaps between these economies. You want some independence. We don't want a one world economy where you then have a global recession. You want to have some independence and sovereignty and a little space between the operations here. So that if that's what's happened, as you said, that's what happened in the European Union. So you've got a problem in Greece, and now the whole European Union is in a mess. Before it used to be, before they had this economic integration in Europe, if Greece had a problem, Germany would do fine, France was on its own, Spain was there, and Portugal did what it wanted to do. Now everybody gets sick at once. It's like Ebola, where everybody's in the same house.
Absolutely right. And you mentioned healthcare, which is going to be my next question to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we sort of got the sight that this might have been happening back in 2009. Do we remember the night when the joint U.S. House and Senate, which was controlled by the Democrats at the time, passed the health care bill along with the Republicans? Why do you think the Republicans went for the health care bill? It had to do with this transatlantic Pacific partnership. Am I going somewhere with this here, Curtis?
You're going down the right track here. Look, you've got the same corporate cronies at work. They're all feeding at the same trough here. Notice that when Obama was pushing Obamacare, who did not speak out against it? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they didn't come out against it. The insurance industry, they didn't come out against it. The pharmaceutical industry, they didn't oppose it either. Now, you've got this trans-Pacific, transatlantic partnership. This is the payback. Because under the deal being negotiated, that was negotiated in secret by the Obama administration, they get rewarded. The pharmaceutical industry is going to get extremely long patent protections for their drugs. It's going to eliminate generic drugs, take them off the market. Those will be considered a copyright violation under the terms of this treaty on a global scale. And the insurance industry these countries that are part of these trade deals are being forced to open their market to the American insurance companies. So they'll be able to sell policies and start raping the people over there with their insurance deals. So those two sectors, which sat by quietly and pushed the Republicans and pushed the Democrats to approve Obamacare, now they get their payback through these deals. That's the kind of corporate cronyism, and those are the kind of deals that were cut in Washington. We're now seeing the other shoe drop. And that's why we call this Obama trade. They had Obamacare, now they get Obama trade.
Okay, you have a couple more minutes, Curtis, or do you have another pressing interview? Because I do want to talk a little bit more about this with you.
I've got 5 more minutes. I'd be happy to talk with you. Okay,
great. I'd like to talk about Boehner urging the U.S. Senate to pass the House's Medicare doctor pay bill. Now, we know conservatives have been skeptical about this Medicare bill. Everyone's been skeptical about Medicare and how that is going to be continually to be funded, as well as our Social Security, because our Social Security is probably 95% used up, if not already used up, by the politicians in Washington already. How much will this Medicare bill affect Americans if this is allowed to pass?
Well, it could affect them pretty dramatically. I mean, what we're seeing with the Medicare is that it's being slowly turned into Medicaid, and it's going to see a decline in services. The services and the care that's available is going to be getting worse, so that everybody's essentially going to be getting Medicaid. Medicare is being turned into Medicaid, and it's being used to finance Obamacare, so that more people will be given worse medical service. And this, again, as we were saying before, this is part of the concentration of power in Washington. You have now centralized healthcare decision-making in Washington, and it's beyond one-size-fits-all. It's now one cast fits all. So no matter what part of your body gets broken, they're going to put you in one cast. It used to be that local doctors could make decisions, and there's plans out there to let the different states make decisions as to what medical care should look like, and how healthcare dollars should be spent. But these guys in Washington, Democrat, Republican, they jealously want to guard that power and keep it in Washington, keep the decision making in Washington. And what's happened is naturally, as you see the consolidation of power and consolidation of services in fewer hands, doctors are going out of business. They're going to work for hospitals. That's the only way they can put up with all of the insurance paperwork that's an absolute requirement now under Obamacare. They just can't do it on their own. The independent doctor is going to go the way of the Model T Ford.
Well, it's been suggested, and I've talked to some people in my audience, that when they use their health care coverage or go to the doctor for just a general visit, that now the doctor's offices, because the insurance companies won't cover that doctor's visit, are now turning it back on their employer and filing workman's comp papers on them. This is ridiculous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. This is just the start. This is just the start of this. And this is people, Blue Dog workers I've spoken to, who actually work in the labor unions, who supposedly got an exemption, per se, Curtis, that they wouldn't be taxed because of this healthcare bill, considering they're already part of their own little set of exchanges. So it's ridiculous. But before we wrap, I want to get your opinion on on weapons. But first, tell us how much of a threat, because it's been suggested that if this transatlantic partnership passes, that our healthcare will be put in charge of the World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization, Curtis, according to my research, not the most reputable organization when it comes to your health.
No, exactly right. Yeah, these transatlantic and trans-Pacific partnership have in there, basically what they're doing is it's setting up UN-administered panels on everything from investments to healthcare regulation. It'll further empower
death panels, correct?
Yes, exactly. Death panels and life panels, and we have the Codex Alimentaris, which writes the impure food standards, and so we'll have these worldwide standards for what kind of food, what constitutes healthy food, what they call healthy food, you would call unhealthy food. And if you try to have higher standards than what this World Health Organization or UN-administered panel sets as a standard, you're not allowed to do that. It's considered a barrier to trade. It's considered illegal. You're going to have. It's like socialism. Everybody gets lowered to the same level. We're all equally poor. There are.
So the FDA would become would become the world FDA in essence, because the world would be people representing the world, being part of the UN or the World Health Organization, what have you, would be in charge of the nation's food supply, what you eat, what you consume, and what you buy every day inside your local grocery store.
That's right. And when this UN panel determines that you shouldn't be able to buy vitamin supplements because they don't work, under their brilliant assessment, these are, useless and don't work, you will not be able to buy vitamins. You will not be able to buy food supplements. You will, if they set a standard that says it's okay to use sewage and industrial sewage to fertilize fields, that's the way all the food's going to be made. And if you try to set a standard that says you can't do that, say, I'm sorry, you're in contravention of this global standard. You can't do that. You can't tell people that the vegetables they're buying have been grown in fields that have been fertilized with industrial sewage.
Wow. All right. I know we're running out of time. Real quick for us, we know that the country of Japan is supposed to be allowed to get its military back under the World War II armistice by next year. How will this, finally, before we let you go, how will this transatlantic Pacific partnership rearm Japan and give arms from the U.S. over to Asian countries, and not necessarily Asian countries who support us?
Well, you have to remember that the Japanese are invested very heavily in China. So while there's this great kabuki theater going on that makes you think that the Chinese and the Japanese hate each other, that they're fighting over the Senkaku Islands, the fact of the matter is, beneath the surface, there's great economic integration between those two Asian giants. So we start, and any weapons we give Japan, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump away from directly arming China.
Oh, wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, the global affairs begin to take effect on America as we know it. Curtis Ellis, thank you so much for joining us. I loved having the conversation. And will you come back with us if this bill comes close to passing? I don't know when it's going to be passing within Congress, because if it's going to get a little media attention, you know how the Obama administration is. They just put a delay tactic out and like to make it disappear for a while.
Well, yeah, they certainly do. This could come up in the Senate as soon as next week, in fact, and I encourage everybody to go to our website, obamatrade.com, and on the front page of obamatrade.com in the right-hand column, there's a button you can push and send a message directly to Congress and tell them not to vote for this. In fact, you want them to vote against it. And they do listen to these. When they get messages from the voters, they do listen.
And
I'd be happy to come back anytime.
All right, sounds great. Before we go, where can people get more information about your recent articles and more on the Transatlantic Pacific Partnership?
You can get more information on my articles at WND.com. That's WorldNet Daily, WND.com. And for more information about these horrible agreements here, the Trans-Pacific and the Transatlantic Partnership, go to obamatrade.com.
All right, Curtis, thanks so much. That's Curtis Ellis, everybody, of WorldNet Daily. Thank you so much, sir. Hope to have you back soon.
You bet. Thank you.